being the set. But to close out the show real quick, let me write down the times. To close out the show, this past week, last week we talked about PlayStation VR. This past week I was able to try out Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive, back to back actually. And while we've been talking about the Nintendo NX and the possibility of that having virtual reality, I want to share, as we end out the show, my impressions of these new virtual reality kits. They're actually available on the market right now, so you maybe have tried them out if you are a rich person with a nice computer. And yeah, Zach, I kind of told you a little bit about it, my impressions. I thought maybe you could ask some questions that you hadn't maybe had answered yet, or maybe some questions that you wanted to reinstate for the audience that they may not have known.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I could just kind of share my impressions just willy-nilly. But I thought it'd be nice for the Koppai audience to hear just impressions of Oculus Rift and VR, or HTC Vive. I was going to do them as separate snippets, but I think overall I can kind of push them together.
Well, when we talked about the PlayStation VR, I kind of wondered if Oculus Rift was kind of, since it had sort of started this whole thing and seemed to be maybe the most, like, it had a lot of developer kits out, it had a lot of feedback, it got a lot of, input from a very technical expertise, like, community of people that are like, this is what we want, this is the most, like, intense VR experience. So I wonder, it seems like kind of the king of VR, and I wanted to know if you got that impression after your Vive and Oculus and PlayStation VR. Was Oculus the best one? Or was Vive the best, or was PlayStation VR the best? I know that I kind of asked that before, and you kind of said they each had maybe their own perks.
Yeah, that's my answer is pretty complex to that. And I mean, because I think the Oculus Rift demo guy said if you had to walk out, or no, I was talking to someone, they asked the same thing, where they're like, if you had to buy one right now, which one would you buy? And I'm like, I don't know. Because here's the big thing. Oculus was the king of visuals. It was the clearest image. Vive was the king of gameplay, and PlayStation VR was the king of comfort. The thing is that Vive was the king of gameplay because it had the hand controls. Both Oculus and PlayStation VR are going to get the hand controls at launch. The PlayStation VR demo didn't have the Move controllers, and the Oculus Rift didn't have them yet. But it will by the time I would have the money to get one. So in that case, Vive was kind of out of the running in my mind because Vive had the worst visuals, I thought. And
even worse than Sony's?
Yeah, because the thing is with Vive, and I don't get it, but it has such superior motion tracking to PlayStation VR, where it really tracks where you are in the room. If you walk up to a wall, there's a grid that pops up. And I don't know why, but in the VR experience, there's hundreds and hundreds of these little red dots. And what it looks like is like you see basically the grid, like the plane of 3D space. And at each grid point, at each unit of measurement, there's a little red dot to kind of give you a sense of perspective of where everything is in your room, which is kind of nice because it kind of gives you a sense of scale of like, okay, I know my couch is 20 dots that way.
Yeah.
But I wish you could just turn it off, and maybe they're going to have an option for that, but it was so, like, you get used to it after a while, but it honestly looks like, I thought I had a broken headset on. And I took it off, and I'm like, yeah, that was awesome. Like, I can't wait for the red dots to be gone. They're like, no, that's there. And I'm like, oh, you shouldn't have said that to me. Like, you should have been like, yeah, that sucks, and just handed it back to the demo person. Like, I'm like, oh no, you just lost my business. Like, I don't want that at all. Like, that was like, when I could get an option without it. Like, there's a little bit of a screen door effect with the PlayStation VR, but that, not red dots everywhere. And I was talking to the representative for Oculus Rift, and he's like, I don't know why they have red dots. Like, there's no reason for that. He's like, we have superior tracking technology in the Oculus Rift, and we don't need those dots. Like, it's kind of unnecessary.
Yeah.
Because the Oculus Rift with motion tracking has a thing called, like, Z targeting or something, or, like, he said Z measuring.
Yeah.
Where the Vive can kind of measure where your head's going, where you're walking around, but the Oculus can really measure where you kneel down to, where you crouch down to, and stuff like that. So there's, like, a demo in the Oculus Rift where there's a little tiny town, and you can kneel over and like look in the windows if you bend over.
Oh wow.
And it was actually really disorienting because I was like falling over in the store and I was like trying to make sure where the floor was. But it's crazy how much you can really bend over and get into stuff. Like,
get up in there.
Yeah, you could lay down the ground with the Oculus Rift, and it would be a completely different perspective. Like, you could look underneath a table in the game, which is really so cool. Weird.
Yeah.
There was a demo. Well, the demo because that's the thing, is the Vive was the most fun though. So I have more stories from the Vive, but that's simply because of the touch controls.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by touch controls? What do you?
Touch controls, I just heard it, that's just the journalistic speak. I've heard, like, in Game Informer and stuff, touch controls are just the two handles, like two Wiimotes, two PlayStation Move controllers, like, they call that touch for some reason. I mean, really it's just analog sticks. But the Vive, I mean, that's when they say a VR unit has touch controls, what I've been gathering is this basically that means it has the handles.
Okay. Because I was like, what does that mean? Like, you're reaching out and it's got, like, things you're touching, like
I mean, in the virtual reality world, that's what it is.
Okay.
Basically, it gives you the ability to touch in virtual reality. And the first demo with Vive is this balloon demo where you press the button on the controller, and out of your hands in the game comes these balloons, which is super stupid.
Yeah.
Like when you think of when you tell someone else that, but it's such a good way to get you acclimated to the sense of depth in the demo because you blow up a balloon in your hand and then you can smack it. And it's just like this weird feeling of like smacking a balloon and it like bounces away and it floats so realistically. And I bent over and blew up a balloon right underneath my head and it started floating up because it's like kind of helium filled and it smacked my VR, like it smacked my face and it knew where my head was. So it bounced away from my face and then like rolled up my face and when I'm just like, I'm in the store looking down at the ground like, no way! I mean, and like I did other things like where I like blew up a balloon and then grabbed it and like kind of like pinched it and it was like shot out of my hand because it was getting so much pressure and I hit a balloon into another balloon and it's just like this kind of weird sense of like just getting you acclimated to be able to hit things around. The coolest demo, which I think is on the other, like the Oculus Rift and PlayStation as well, is this thing called Tilt Brush, where you basically, in one hand you have a palette, and the other hand you have your paintbrush.
Yeah.
And you can stick all that, and you can paint. The weirdest thing, though, is like you can paint in the air, but it's so weird to paint in a 3D space, where like I drew a smiley face, and you can just turn your head, and it's a completely different image because you're viewing it in a different way. And I was going crazy with it because I knew I only had like 5 minutes. So I painted these beautiful murals, and I was like I wrote my name. But when I wrote my name, I was like pushing in and out of like the Z-axis. So like when I turned around, it was just like a big scribble and stuff. The background image for this, actually, this snippet may be that image. Someone got a picture of me playing it, so you may see it. It may look like scribbles, but I promise you it was actually some beautiful artwork I was making. Someone in the line even said, like, this guy must have done this before, because I was just going to town on it. But it's so weird. Like, I could draw a line, and then I could draw a spiral around that line just by, like, flicking my wrist, and it was just so weird, and it felt so intuitive. But it makes me think of, like, when PlayStation VR has the Dreams game by Media Molecule, the guys that made Little Big Planet, how they have that game where you can basically form clay and make creatures and forests and stuff like that. To buy a VR unit and just spend your entire day creating inside of that is going to be so, like, and if you can share stuff like that, like here's a drawing I did in VR and someone else can just walk around it and view it, that'll be so insane. And there's some paintbrushes that, like, stuff that literally could not happen in life before, like a paintbrush of flames. So I was just painting fire in the air and the flames just stay where I painted them and it looks like fire. So I'm just like staring at these flames just floating in the air and you can draw, I mean, I did like a few swipes of an orange flame, a few swipes of a yellow flame, and then like a base of red flames. So it looked like a big campfire, and it just looked real, and there's like a glow to it. So as I walk around, there's just shadows, and
I could imagine people making complete like rooms of just like artworks. Like I was just having the thought of what they really need to do for that game is make like a museum where you upload like maybe like user rated, and then you walk through. That's what
Dreams will be on the PlayStation VR. Dreams allows you to make like forests. You can make mountains and levels.
But what would be cool is even if that game integrated how like just people's best artworks, and you could walk through a gallery of somebody's really well drawn, gigantic piece of work that you could look up and admire and kind of get your own inspirations, you know, that sort of thing. They could really implement features like that, which would be really cool.
Yeah, it's going to be insane.
Dreams,
like,
if they have VR for that, I just feel like is going to be
I think
really
Dreams
crazy.
is specifically VR. I think that's.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. I think it's like one of those like launch games that's like going to be very specific to PlayStation VR. Like they're kind of like just in charge of that right now. But that's the thing is I did another demo in Vive where it was you're just underwater and you're on a boat that's sunk and a whale swims by you, which was super weird because I'm like looking around on the ground and it got super dark all of a sudden. And I look up and a whale's blocking the sun underwater and I'm like, oh, there's a whale there. And it just gives you that sense of scope and then I did another demo where you shoot different, like robots coming at you. And it was kind of weird because you can, like, it's basically kind of teaching you how to do completely like 360 viewing in a game. Because some people come up behind you and you're just shooting basically a survival mode. The sad thing is you get 3 lives at the Microsoft store. So they give you 3 lives to play this game, this arcade game of like just survive against the robots. And for the last one, my last life, I was just joking around and I put the gun to my head. And pulled the trigger, and my guy died. And it was such a weird sensation to have this controller in my hand, put it to my head, pull the trigger, and my guy went, and I'm like, and they're like, okay, that's your demo, and I'm like, well, crap. Like, I didn't realize that, like, I could really blow my brains out in this game, but, I mean, because what other game could you grab the gun and put it towards your head, you know, like, yeah, you can put the controller anywhere, and like I could see the gun moving towards my ear. Like it was just such a weird sensation to see that. That being said, I did do Oculus Rift. That was basically a series of movies. One was really weird because there's like this alien right in front of you that as you walked around, the alien would just like look at you and watch you. And it's kind of just like a cinematic experience, but it was just so weird that like when you have a game like Skyrim or Fallout where you have these people talking to you. Right now they're looking right at the screen because that's where the camera is. But it's weird that you could like, you're so immersed in this world and Oculus is so clear. That's the big thing with Oculus is it's just crystal clear, like more so than anything. Like it just felt like I was there. And this alien just looking right at your eyeballs. Like it's just, that's a weird thing when it's just like really tracking with you, subtle movements. It's not like awkwardly moving its head to follow you. It's just like, it's just kind of keeping its head where it's at, but just moving its pupils just enough to see where your eyes are, because it knows where your eyes are, too.
Yeah.
That was a very weird sensation, and then one of the coolest demos of Oculus Rift was a T-Rex walks over you, and it just looks like a T-Rex just walked over you, and the headphones are thundering, and it's just, that was
Arc VR.
Yeah. My biggest complaint there with Oculus, and I'm gonna have to figure out before I get it, if I ever do get it, is just my glasses got stuck in it. It was pretty kind of painful on my eyes because it was just so tight. It's such a small unit. Like PlayStation VR just basically cups over your whole head.
Do you think that the glasses made it tighter? Or do you think just
I do think my glasses were a problem. That being said, I mean I want to wear my glasses.
Yeah, I probably will wear contacts, I would assume, like when I
Yeah.
But you did try your glasses on with the PSVR and with the Vive, and you said it was all good?
With PSVR, the glasses, I didn't even notice they were on. Like, it was just that cussed around so much. The thing, I could see the lens a little bit more with PlayStation VR. And with Oculus, I did get used to it after a while. But I can just imagine that being somewhat discomforting for some people. But Oculus was definitely the lightest. Vive was definitely the heaviest. Vive had such a long cable attached to the back of it. It felt like you were being like pulled around by some sort of Matrix machine.
Yeah.
Where Oculus, I was standing up with Oculus and I never once felt like I was being tugged around by the cord that was attached to it. It was just like a tiny USB thing. And once again, the Oculus demo guy was like, I don't know why the Vive has that. Like, I just don't get like why they need that. They don't need the red dots and they don't need that big cord. But they have it. Like, it just seems like, I mean...
Well, you think, like, Oculus has been around doing this since the beginning of this whole craze, so perhaps they just are, a little bit smarter with it in that regard. And then you also have Sony, who are, a consumer electronics, huge company. HTC and their Vive, I would say... I don't know, maybe is not, I don't know, I've just heard, HTC, I had that HTC phone and stuff that was just absolutely
that was terrible.
horrible. Yeah, so, I wonder
they're
if
kind of on the rise. But,
yeah.
They're partnering with Microsoft though, so I'm surprised it's not more efficient because Microsoft usually puts out good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd I just had a pen. I don't know where my pen went to draw the notes. Oh, there it is. I found it. But yeah, so that's my impressions of that. I do think, I mean, my big thing leaving this weekend though, and especially after leaving the PlayStation VR thing, is just like I understand Nintendo's worry of like jumping in it too quick. Cause I understand that they may like try on like a PlayStation VR unit and be like, this isn't at the point they want it to be at yet.
Yeah.
So I do understand that. Like I do think it's from some people, it's been a little bit overhyped of how clear and how I'm really there. Like, no,
yeah.
I could see the ground through my nose, like the nose hole. Like I can see, you can see reality around you. You know, you're wearing a headset.
Yeah.
There's a little bit, you can see the binoculars, you know, like your glasses are pressed against your face. Like it's not, you're completely there yet.
Yeah.
And
if you're wearing glasses, that is.
Yeah. I mean, I think even without glasses, I mean, maybe but I mean, you can still try, like, feel the headset on with Vive. It feels like you have an extra pound on your head. I mean,
yeah.
I'm saying all that to say, like, it's not completely perfected yet as far as the technology goes. So I can understand that someone like Nintendo or Apple and all of them would want to wait till it is just so perfect.
Well, especially since Nintendo has been burned out on VR from rushing into it way, way too quickly before.
Yeah, that was bad. That being said, I do think this is, with a game with something like Oculus and specifically with the touch controls, that's very, very, very key. I don't really understand too much of an appeal. Well, I get the appeal. I don't understand the revolution behavior or belief, that VR is going to change things with just a controller. In my mind, VR with a controller is just a new fancy display. That's very cool and allows for some really cool interactions with being able to look all around you. But with just a controller, I don't imagine it being too much. Mm-hmm. Virtual reality with two separated controllers that you can move your hands wherever and you can do all that. That's insane.
Yeah.
That is going to be completely changing everything, where you can have two Wiimotes in your hand, two PlayStation Move controllers, two wands in your hand, and draw and sculpt and grab and shoot and have your shield over here and your sword over there, and you swing your sword here and block the person over there. And you see it all in real time, and it's just all completely 100% measured to where your movements are. That's going to be a future of gaming. I think awesome.
That, one of the big things, too, about VR is going to be not just the gameplay innovations, but I feel like one of the really cool things that I've seen somebody already do is, like, they do these drone races and stuff where you can attach a camera to the front of a drone and then put on a VR headset and fly the drone around, and you're basically flying, like, in your in controlling it, and you can go, you don't have to necessarily race them, but you can just go flying up way into the trees and above into the, and fly over your town and feel like you're floating above your own city. It kind of gives you that feeling of flying. I think that cinematic experiences sort of like that, and also social experiences, like think of games like maybe the Sims
Pokemon Go.
Pokemon Go, or the Sims VR, or like a sort of Second Life thing where everybody can kind of get together, or even I've seen like the movie theater apps that they have for it, where you can have two friends or multiple friends go to a movie theater together. You guys are sitting next to each other. You can look at your friend there, talk to him, and look up at this huge screen and watch movies together with your friends, like on a virtual immersive experience. And I feel like things like that, where you actually feel like you're in the room with your friend, and co-op experiences like that will definitely will push it, I think, a bit more. I was going to ask if you think, after experiencing PSVR, the Vive, and Oculus, that you are like, this fall I want for sure a VR device. Like, are you completely sold? Are you hyped through the roof on it? Or are you like, I can wait just a little bit longer for perhaps some more?
It depends. I mean, I think, especially this new job I got today, that it won't be a money problem or anything. I think, like, we're going to be pretty good on finances, because that is a big question of it. Like, especially with something like Oculus, like $800 on that, like, it's awesome. Is it that awesome? I don't know. PlayStation VR, to have a VR headset in the house, to have the Move controllers and play around with it, like, and have friends over and be like, try this out, you know, and $400 or I guess $500 with all the other stuff, you know, the Move controllers and all that. Yeah, you know, I mean, that's October 13th. That's my birthday. It sucks I've missed out on every pre-order that's available. But I could see myself looking for a store at midnight and being like, yeah, like, it hasn't made me want to get it any less, you know, it's just, but yeah, I definitely am going to check Vive off my list. Like, Vive, unless I have a few extra $100 floating around and I want to have the exclusives available on it, then Vive's kind of just gone. Like, I'd rather just save the $200 extra to get Oculus, or I'd rather just go ahead and back up and maybe lose a little bit of the quality visually to have the comfort and affordability of the PlayStation VR.
Well, I guess also, like, keep in mind, I've seen, like, Blunty put on his channel, he does some of those reviews of hardware. There's a lot of VR headsets that are also going to be rolling out that are on the more, like, you know, they seem like they're very high end, they seem like they're doing great, and maybe some of them are a little more budget friendly, and if you wanted to still go like the Oculus sort of PC route versus the console PSVR route, there are a lot of, it's like blowing up now, and so in the next year I'm sure there's going to be so many devices. I guess all I would say with that is if you're looking into one of those maybe cheaper ones that still has the specs that you would want out of a VR device, just make sure, I guess, that, I don't know, that you have that in mind, that the support for it might not be as great, it might not last as long as a company, so, like, it might be not getting firmware updates and, you know, those sort of things.
Yeah, I think the winner here overall is Oculus once the touch controls come out. But honestly, if you're wondering like where to jump in on VR, I think Oculus, like, once you get the touch controls come out, like, that's where to go. Yeah. If you have the money and the PC to do it. And as far as like Nintendo goes, like, to kind of wrap it up as far as Koppai Podcast, I think, like you just said, like, they're going to be hopping up all over the place. Especially if they keep Wiimotes going. If they can find a way to do like a Wiimote plus where it's VR compatible, and then they have a VR unit with the NX, that'll be perfect. That'll be great. It needs touch controls.
Yeah, definitely. I also kind of predict,
or like, motion controls.
Yeah, think of the iPhone, you know, and how I imagine that like the Oculus, I can see in a year or even maybe 2 years or something like that, where they're going to be pushing out the Oculus 2 and the Oculus, like, it's kind of the case with the iPhone where they put out the iPhone 6 or the iPhone 7, and then that makes the iPhone 5 go like really down in price, and I'm in the boat where it's like, I really don't mind the iPhone 5 as much. Like, I find that it still runs efficiently, it's still really quick for me, and it's like, now it's $200 cheaper. I can see that because I feel like VR companies are going to want to constantly innovate and constantly put a new revision of their unit out that's even more top of the line, and that will inevitably make the previous version fall down, which is still super, super powerful for, you know, the average consumer. So I would wait, maybe possibly, like, I could imagine that in a year's time the Oculus will not be at that $800 price point. I could imagine that even PSVR might have an upgrade that makes the price go down, or, you know, something like that. So
yeah, I don't know.
Something to keep in mind, I guess.
I wish they would have a heavier unit for Oculus that encompasses more of your face. I think the big thing is they're worried about it being too heavy, because you do have a kind of experience of like, whoa, like a little bit of whiplash when you have a heavy thing on your head.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that with PlayStation VR, but I was also sitting down. I don't know. Because the Oculus is tiny. It is tiny. It's like, I mean, you put that thing on your head like binoculars, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like it almost seems like the size of binoculars. Like, even smaller, I think, than the Gear VR, like, by Samsung, and that thing's pretty small too. Like, it seems like on the Google Cardboard side of things, where it's just enough space for your eyes, and that's it. And so hopefully, though, I mean, I'm excited to have like my own unit and be able to mess with it and try it on and maybe put pads in there to make it more comfy, you know, just all stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I definitely want a VR unit with motion controls. I remember leaving PlayStation VR's demo so disappointing. So I'm like, it's cool, but it's like, I mean, I'd rather have a 4K TV than that, Like,
Yeah.
if I'm gonna have the controller in my hand, like it was not too much of a different experience. But when I was doing, especially the tilt brush thing, when I was doing that, I'm like, I could do this for hours and hours, and I've never done this before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such a cool thing when you find that in gaming. Like when you first play Wii Sports Tennis, and you're just like, I've never had this experience in gaming before. This experience of winging my arms around, like that was the same thing with tilt brush.